Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So, I think it's time to talk about the ultimate Shadebinder build. If you don't know, about 2 seasons ago, I made a ultimate build, which is just what I call this little series that I have going on with my builds, for Behemoth. And it made the class very strong in PvE, basically utilising everything. Its neutral game, and a certain exotic to make it really strong, and just everything, right, to make it extremely useful in PvE. I haven't actually covered any of the other Stasis subclasses, and I think with the new mods that are out now, it's time to cover Shadebinder. We are going to be using Mantle about Harmony. The reason is because Shadebinder itself, the super for Shadebinder, I guess, Winter's Wrath, it's very good for keeping enemies at bay, but it is not very good for actual damage. It's not like Celestial Nighthawk Golden Gun or Thunder Crash with Curus, you know, Nova Bomb by itself, Bubble, you know, it hasn't really got that utility. It's just there to keep enemies at bay and basically ad clear. So the idea of the super is to just keep it there for a rainy day. If you really need to use it, you can. But the idea is to save it and basically utilize your Stasis Weapon, which there's a lot of options now, but the one I will be covering is Traveler's Chosen for a specific purpose. That is completely optional. You don't have to use Traveler's Chosen. It's just really nice for something that I want to kind of link into the build. So yeah, we're going to be using Mantle to basically fuel your Stasis Weapon and go on an absolute rampage with it. And yeah. So I want to talk about the new mods. Obviously they're not out yet. It's going to be a long time before we actually get access to these, and I wanted to cover this build early just because I don't want to, like, it's fresh on my mind. I want to get it out there, you know. So the 2 mods we are going to be covering and really using in this build to make it work is Elemental Time Dilation and Elemental Shards. Now what Elemental Shards does is all of the stasis shards that you make when you freeze enemies, in Warlock's case, which is very easy to do, they count as stasis elemental shards. So every single enemy you freeze will create a shard, and that will count as an elemental well, which is insane. That is absolutely insane, and that is going to practically give us a buff for a mod that I will be covering in a second, over and over and over and over and over and over and over, because Warlocks have turrets that will just continuously freeze enemies and make shards for you, which is insane. So to pair with that, we have Elemental Time Dilation, which when you have this equipped, if you use, for example, I will be using Font of Might. So if I have one of these in my gear, and then I use 2 Font of Mights, that will actually increase Font of Might from 10 seconds to whatever the new timer is. Obviously we don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to assume, since Font of Might is a 10-second buff, it'll go to 20 seconds, because I, right now, I'm assuming that it will just put the same effect on top of each other. So it'll go from 10 to 20. There is a chance it'll go to 10 to 15, which is still completely fine. That's a lot of time to, you know, get another shard. You may not even need time dilation with this build. It's just really nice. It gives you a lot of freedom to just go on a rampage and continuously refresh that buff. So, to get shards really quickly, of course, because we want to get that out there, we are going to be using Bleak Watcher and Glacial Harvest. You need Glacial Harvest, otherwise you won't make the shards in the first place. And Bleak Watcher is the turret that will just continuously freeze enemies over and over and make you your shards. We are going to be using Bleak Watcher with Momentum Transfer, which will give us melee energy when we hit enemies with grenades. 1 Bleak Watcher continuously freezing an enemy 3 times is enough to get a melee back. So you can fire your melee at something, get shards that way, and then while that's happening, your grenade is giving you melee energy to get another melee back to then get more shards. And picking up shards gives you melee energy as well, so you'll get more melees on top of that to freeze more enemies to get more shards, which will fuel Font of Might and fuel your rampaging, ad clear stasis gun. So it's already great, and we haven't even got to the best part yet, which are the fragments, because the fragments are OP with stasis shards. So because we are continuously freezing enemies, we're going to get a damage resist, and it's a pretty hefty one. So basically when you're standing near a frozen enemy or a crystal, in this case it'll just be frozen enemies because that's what you're going to be doing, you just take less damage. That's pretty nice. Then we have our slow abilities last longer, which is perfect because what the turret does before freezing them is slow them, and that will last long enough to keep them frozen or keep them slowed the entire duration before getting frozen, so they have no chance of escaping. Once they're tagged by that slow, they're donezoed. They're going to get frozen. So that's really good. Then we have collecting a stasis shard gives you a small amount of overshield, which can be continuously added up over and over until the 10 seconds is up, which then it will disappear, and then you just pick up more shards and it will go again. So you basically now have a permanent overshield because of how many shards you're going to be making. So there's that. And then we have shards track, so you don't have to get close to them to actually get them. They'll just come to you. Phenomenal. Shadebinder is absolutely cracked with all of this. And yeah, so the actual mods I have on right now is exactly what you want to be using. So right here will be where we have elemental shards, because it takes 2 slots. So I have my finders, I have my discipline mod in this case, and then I have elemental shards, which of course means the shards make me activate stasis wells, basically. I don't have to actually make stasis wells, the shards are just the wells themselves. Then here we have the first Font of Might mod, because we will need multiple of these. So we have our first one here, we have momentum transfer, of course. I'm using a fusion rifle, so I figured I'd just stick this in there. Don't know what else to put in here right now, so I'll just put that there. We have that. Then I have my second Font of Might in my chest piece, because, of course, again, we need to. So that's what that is, and I just have basic mods. I have Radiant Light, since I have a freed up slot. This lets me get triple 100s, which is perfect, because discipline and strength is very valuable in this build, of course, because we want our Bleak Watchers as fast as possible, and we want our melee as fast as possible. You can sub out strength, considering how easy it will be to get, you know, melees in this build, but it's up to you. And then lastly, we have Elemental Time Dilation, which will go in this slot right here, because it is a 3 slot. That accompanies particle deconstruction perfectly, because I, of course, have to have that in the build. If you don't have the correct slots, you might have to give that one up, or give up Radiant Light in my case, because I'm using triple 100s. There is a lot of freedom to the build. There's a lot of room to put in whatever you want. As you can see, I'm using things that can easily be substituted. Like, you don't have to have momentum transfer, you don't have to have this stuff. It's just very nice because it fuels the build over and over very effectively. So you can kind of do what you want. It's completely up to you. I've just filled out everything accordingly and had a lot of freedom to add what I want in on top of that. So yeah, this is where Elemental Time Dilation will go, which basically allows double Font of Might to be possible, which increases the time that we have to keep Mantle Battle Harmony up, keep Stasis damage boost up with our Stasis Weapon, which in my case is Traveler's Chosen because of Gathering Light, which means every stack that I get after a kill, I can consume and get melee and grenade energy, which will, again, fuel the build over and over and over. This is completely optional. You don't have to have this, of course, because you can have whatever you want, as long as it's stasis, right? It doesn't matter what it is. And eventually, more and more and more stasis weapons will come out, and this build will just only get better and better, fueling your favorite stasis guns. So, yeah, we basically abuse the neutral game as much as humanly possible, constantly freezing enemies to activate Font of Might, which means we can shred out with our stasis gun for a 45% damage buff, because Mantle Battle Harmony is 20, Font of Might is 25, which together is 45. So you're just continuously shredding out with your stasis gun. I'm not sure if I mentioned, but Headstone is very good on this as well, because you can constantly freeze enemies as you kill enemies, which then makes more shards, which then fuels the build even more. So it's great. There's plenty of ways of fueling the build over and over. I mean, if you really wanted to be crazy with it. You could use Salvation's Grip to freeze enemies that way. That's questionable, but you could do it. And that's basically the Shadebinder build. You ditch the super until you desperately need it to continuously and endlessly freeze enemies in your way to give you insane damage buffs, which in turn means you can shred out the enemies that you're freezing extremely quickly. And you can just spam grenades, melee, to your heart's content. It is a infinite ability, infinite damage buff build for Shadebinder. And that is basically the ultimate Shadebinder build. So with that, I'm going to show like a little bit of patrol gameplay, just giving you an idea of how it's going to work in a more practical manner. But yeah, that's the build. Let me know what you think. Hopefully you enjoy. And when the mods come out, hopefully it's as good as I made it sound. Again, thanks for watching. Adios. Alright, so I'm here in patrol just to show you how this is going to work. So basically you'll open your engagement by freezing an enemy with your melee. In this case the captain. I get close, I get resistance, I get a bit of overshield. Of course I'm taking damage, so it didn't really work out as planned. But now my grenade is going to just constantly freeze enemies, make shards like this, which gives me health regeneration instantly. Gives me overshield when I have full health. I get melee from it, so I can, you know, kill them. Obviously, this would be making Stasis Wells activate my Font of Might just when I pick up the shards, right? And then I could just, you know, go on a rampage with my Traveler's Chosen in this case very easily, because I have a 45% damage buff to accompany it. And then when I have depleted my abilities and I have no way to quickly get them back, I can consume the energy and get them back really quickly. So that's basically it. That is the build. That's how it's going to work. You basically have a 45% damage buff for your Stasis Weapon permanently. You have perma abilities, which on Stasis is very hard to do, but in this case it is not. And that's it. You just go on a rampage, you have fun, and yeah, Stasis is awesome in PvE, pretty much, with this. So, hope you enjoy, and thanks for watching again.